So lovely to be here with everybody this evening. We're going to start off this evening's practice. You can lie or you can sit, whatever feels most comfortable for you. But I want you to be in a position where you feel able to relax. I'm going to start off the class with the lights on in the studio, and then I'll turn them down towards the end of the practice. But just so we're going to do a couple of movements tonight that might not be quite so familiar to everybody. So I'll keep the lights on for the moment. If you do find it a bit glaring in the studio, you can always use the eye pillow that's next to you. And equally, if you're at home, if you want to sort of adjust the environment that you're in, if there's lights above you, or you need to close the door or switch your phone on mute, or whatever it is that you might need to do, just allowing yourself to create a space where you feel able to start to draw your attention inwards. Whether you are sitting or lying, you might choose to close your eyes. You might prefer to keep your eyes open, but just with a soft and gentle gaze. Again, that's your choice, your preference. So I want you to just spend a few moments just letting the body just kind of find the position that it feels comfortable to be in. And that might mean just a little bit of shifting or moving, readjusting parts of yourself. There might be some parts of you that maybe would feel more supportive by having some form of prop underneath you. So a blanket, a cushion, a pillow. And then once the body has started to settle, just taking this opportunity to acknowledge the fact that you've got yourself here this evening. Of all the things you may have been doing, you've chosen to be here. And the reasons that we're here are very unique to us all. So maybe just spending a moment just to acknowledge why you've made this effort to be here this evening. And then after we've took this time to acknowledge why we're here, turning your attentions just back to the physical body and noting how your physical body is feeling this evening. So there might be a general sense of how your body feels. There might be very specific areas where your attention might get drawn to. And they might be areas where there's some history involved and some things that have happened. These might be areas that might not bother you that much, but maybe today there's something going on that needs your attention or is needing you at this time. So just acknowledging how the body is as a whole. And each individual part. And then turning your attentions to how you are energetically this evening. For those that are practicing this live with me, we're practicing this in the evening. So there's might well be a general sense of feeling tired. But maybe your energetic system is telling you something different to tiredness in the evening. Maybe there's a slight kind of disjointedness between how you're feeling, maybe in your mind, and how you're feeling energetically within your body. That can be a really common thing, that the body can feel tired, but the mind can feel quite active, quite awake. So just noticing where your energies lie this evening. And then what I'd invite you to do is just begin to turn your attentions to your breath. Without the need to have to change your breath or force it or allow it to become anything different to what it is in this moment. Just become the observer of your breath and noticing the breath as it comes into the body, noticing the breath as it leaves the body, and observing whether the breath is coming through the nose or through the mouth or a combination of both of those. Whether the breath feels fast or slow, whether it feels smooth or slightly sort of rugged or just disjointed in some way. Maybe the breath feels deep or shallow. Maybe the breath feels long or short. And acknowledging every breath that we take is a completely unique experience. Every breath feels different, is a different speed, is a different velocity. Each breath, a unique moment in time. And as we move through this practice this evening, I'd invite you to stay curious about your breath and notice how your breath may change. It may adapt itself to the shapes that you're making, to the effort that you're putting in. It will change as maybe your mind starts to change. Quite often as we go through these practices, our minds can get busy, they can get quiet, they can get distracted, they can get really focused. And when you notice in those changes happening within yourself, notice what's happening with the breath as well. The relationship that we have to the nervous system. And how most of us probably spend most of our day in our fight, flight, or flee part of our nervous system, responding and reacting. And how this practice can be an opportunity to just step away from that for a while. To make friends with the other side of our nervous system. The side that's to do with nurturing, calming, soothing, and restoring ourselves. So for those of you that may be lying, I want you to just start to bring a little bit of movement back into the body, stretching, yawning, curling up into a ball. And I'd like you to come onto one side. For those of you that are sitting, you might just want to have a little stretch through the upper body, or you might want to release the legs out of any cross-legged position that you might be sitting in. And then when you feel ready, we're going to begin to bring ourselves onto our mat and into our first position this evening, which is going to be child's pose. So as we come into child's pose, some of you may well find that you need a bit of support. So you might want to put a bolster maybe underneath you, something to sit on, could be a cushion or a pillow. Some of you might find actually having a bolster in front of you can be quite nice to rest the torso upon rather than rest the bottom upon. Some of you might not need anything at all. The choice is really up to you, what feels comfortable for you. So what you could do in addition to coming into child's pose is taking the legs a bit wider. So if you bring the big toes together and let the knees just sort of drop out to either side, that can just start to work into the inner thigh area. So some of you might find as you start to come forwards, maybe the forehead just naturally reaches the earth, or you might want to put something in front of you to rest your forehead upon. Maybe if you need a little bit of more support for the neck through the head. Options with arms can be to stretch your arms forwards and ahead of you. They can work as a nice support for the head again, so you could cross the forearm. Depending on support that you may have for your head or your body, you might also consider bringing the arms closer towards your body. So you could have the hands either sides of your head or even just gently draped back behind you. So we've come into child's pose as the first position for this practice, just as an opportunity for us to gently stretch out through our lower back region. Quite often, if we've spent a day maybe either standing or sitting, you might find being in this position just helps to gently stretch out through the connective tissue, around the glutes, around that lower back area. And depending on how wide you've taken the legs, you might be getting a bit of an internal stretch as well around the groin and inner thigh area. Depending on the placement of your arms, you might also be getting a stretch through the shoulders, the upper back, and the chest region. So with all of these yin postures tonight, we're going to hold for a set period of time. And that set period of time is kind of dependent on the accessibility of the shape that we're making, but also is very much determined by how comfortable you feel within it as well. So the idea of this yin practice is not to allow ourselves to go to that point of maximum. So we don't want to be at a point of strain. And by being at a point of strain, we'll actually be activating that sympathetic side of our nervous system again. So that kind of fight, flee, and freeze part of our nervous system. So we want to be kind of stepped back away from that a little bit. We want to be in a place where there's a little bit of discomfort, that's okay, but we don't want to be at that maximum where we're forcing ourselves to have to be there. And you'll know when you're forcing yourself because there'll be a slight sense of kind of shaking in the body. The sensations that you're feeling will feel you can't hold them for a period of time. So there'll be quite a lot of shifting or moving or kind of, trying to avoid that sensation. Your breath might also be quite deep as well. So sometimes when we're sustaining something and it feels an effort, we might be breathing quite deeply. So again, I want you to just check in with those sensations and the energetic response to this position. And if you need to change it or alter it in any way, you can do. The option here is always to back off rather than go further in. So as we start to move a little bit further into this practice, I'm going to offer a bit less instruction and give a bit more space. But right now, what we're going to do is actually move into our second position, which is very much took from this child's pose still, but it's starting to work into the side of our body. So what I'd like you to do is, if possible, stretch your hands ahead of you, and then you're going to walk your hands and your head off towards the left-hand side. So essentially what we're starting to do is we're leaning to the left side and we're bowing through the right-hand side of our rib cage. So you'll start to feel this around the area, potentially underneath the armpit of the right side, around the right ribs. You might even feel it in the right hip or the right side of your waist. Again, you can sometimes go a bit too far. And if you go too far, you'll kind of know that you've done that because you might start to feel a little bit of cramping in the left-hand side. It might feel an effort to hold this shape. Again, the option here is to support the head. So you could move the arms, the head, and any support that you're using, like a cushion or a blanket, over towards that left-hand side as well. Another thing you can do is just cross your right forearm, place it on your left forearm, and just use that right forearm as a support for the head. So an interesting thing to do here could be to visualize yourself breathing more into the right-hand side of your lung cavity than your left. So that right side that feels open, or that feels like it's being stretched. Just noticing how that feels to breathe into that right side of the ribs. You may even imagine that right side of the ribs being a little bit like the gills of a fish. You're just kind of breathing into the gills of the rib cage. So when you feel ready, we're going to make our way back to our center point. So we're walking back to child's pose. If you're finding maybe the legs are feeling a little bit compressed, you might just want to come out of the shape just for a moment and maybe just move a bit through the back. You might even want to stretch one leg away from you and just push the heel towards the wall behind you. Maybe it just feels nice just to be back at that center point again. And then when you feel ready, we're going to start to edge our way over towards that right-hand side. So you're going to walk your hands and your head off in that right direction. And again, noticing maybe how it feels to go a little bit beyond where you feel comfortable and then edging back. That can be quite a nice thing to do, to just kind of test where that furthest point is, rather than feeling like we have to be at that furthest point all the time. We could always move into it if it feels like the position or the shape that you're in now feels quite easy, but we can always back off as well. So knowing that we have those options, and also reminding ourselves that we can come out of any shape as and when we feel we've had enough. So you might just want to compare the sensations that you were feeling to the right side compared to what you might be feeling to the left side now. Is there a difference between the right side and the left side of the torso? Does it feel easier or more challenging on this side? Maybe going back to that idea of Imagining the ribs are like the gills of a fish. And breathing through the side body. Maybe visualizing that in your mind, what that may look like or what that may feel like. So when you feel ready, we're gently going to edge our way back to our center point again. As we come back to that center point, you might just want to lift up. Just take a few moments, maybe just to move through the spine. So maybe going through a little sequence of the cow and the cat, just arching around in the back. You might find you want to have a little sway of the hips from side to side. Again, it might be more the legs that you need to stretch out. Maybe they've been in that shape for a long time and you feel like you need to have a little bit of a sense of release. So when you feel ready, what I'd like you to do is come down onto your abdomen and then slide your forearms ahead of yourself. So you're just going to gently prop yourself up on your forearms. If this feels too intense, an option here is going to be to cross the forearms and bring your forehead onto the forearms. That's all right. So if you're in Sphinx, which is the first shape that I showed, which is the one where you're resting on your elbows and your forearms, if you're finding it's a little bit pinchy in the lower back, you might want to take the feet just a little bit wider. And also just have a little roll through the hips from side to side. So just a gentle massage into that lower back area and that pelvic region can be useful to just help it soften a little. You can do the same thing if you're in that crocodile pose, which was the second one that I showed, with your forearms supporting the forehead. An interesting thing to notice here is, what are you doing with your head, your chin, and your face? Quite often when we come into certain shapes, we might find our face sort of joining in a bit. So you might find yourself straining a little. It could be that you're lifting your chin up and sort of looking up to the ceiling and compressing through the back of the neck. That might feel quite comfortable for you, but if it's creating tension or tightness, maybe just notice how it feels to drop the chin down a little bit and just kind of look forwards, maybe towards the hands, or even down further, so you're looking between the elbows. Notice how it feels with that compression against that abdominal area. Does that feel comfortable? Does it feel uncomfortable? And know that you can come out back into that crocodile pose, or you could push back into child's pose if you feel you need to release at any point at all. This Sphinx position is a really great way to gently stretch through that abdominal area. But by stretching the abdomen, we are compressing the lower back. If you'd like to take this into a slightly deeper back bend and deeper abdominal stretch, what you could do is take the hands a little bit wider and straighten your arms, pushing the floor away. And you just lift yourself up a little bit higher, so you're coming into a different position, which is called the seal. Now, again, you might find this creates some compression on the abdomen that feels a little bit too intense for you. Ways we can adapt it is to take the feet a little bit wider. You can always come back to Sphinx position or come down to crocodile. But wherever you are, I want you to just focus upon your breath just for the next few moments. Just observing the coming and the going of the breath. No, you can come up, you can come down at any time. When you've had enough, we're going to come down to crocodile. So we're going to bring the forearms down, cross the forearms, and bring the forehead onto the forearms, turning the head one way or another. You're going to take about 5 breaths with the head turned in that first direction. And when you've done your 5 breaths, turn the head in the opposite direction. And 5 more breaths on the other side. When you've done 5 on each side, turn the head back to the center again. Just a couple of recovery breaths here. And then to help counter pose, we're going to slide our hands either sides of our chest, push ourselves up and bottom back in the direction of the heels again. Just spending about a minute back in child's pose, just to help to stretch out through that lower back region after we've been compressing it. If it feels okay for you, we're going to lift ourselves up to 4-point kneeling. You might want your bolster here at this point. So I'm going to suggest just sort of pop it towards the top end of your mat. From this 4-point kneeling position, we're going to step our right foot forwards. And what you might find is just by bringing the bolster over your toes, you could utilize the bolster as a support to bring your hands onto. So some of you might not need a support at all. You might just push that bolster away and you might just want to pop your hands either side of that right foot instead. Another thing you can do with the bolster, if you don't want to use it for the arms or hands, you can always use it for the back leg. It can be quite interesting just to pop it underneath your left knee, and that can give just a slightly different sensation. You can feel a little bit deeper through that left hip flexor and the front of that left thigh. But ultimately, we've brought ourselves into this lunging position. If this isn't feeling comfortable for you, you can always come out of the lunge slightly and rest your hands upon your right thigh instead. For some people, that is a lot better to do that rather than being near the floor. So this isn't a position we're going to hold for too long, so don't worry. It can feel a little bit intense. A really interesting thing to just pay attention to here is where this is a little bit more of an active position. Just notice where you're making effort? Is that effort through the hands? Is it maybe you're scrunching your toes up? Maybe you're sort of unconsciously gritting your teeth together. Sometimes we can be pushing our tongue into the roof of our mouth. There might be sort of held tension around the shoulders, around the abdomen or the pelvic region. So it's a really useful position to help stretch through the hip flexors, through the glutes. So just a couple more moments here. And then when you feel ready, I'm going to invite you just to back yourself off, come back to 4-point kneeling. And then we're going to swap coming onto the left leg. So walking the left foot forwards. Again, if you want to put your bolster in front to support your hands, if you want to pop it behind that right knee to give you, or in front of that right knee to give you a bit of support there, you can do. You might find you need to change the hand position. So sometimes coming onto knuckles can be useful if you get uncomfortable through wrists or finger joints. Again, remember if you want to utilize coming up onto the left thigh rather than using the floor in this lunge position. So this can be one of those positions where you might notice the breath changes a little bit. The breath might get a little bit deeper, might feel a little bit longer or fuller. So just observing if you're able to just soften the breath down a little. How would that feel? How does the body and the mind respond to that as we take that opportunity to soften? So again, just a couple more breaths here. And then when you feel ready, I want you to just give yourself just a moment just to come back to sit in a position that feels comfortable for you. So you might want to sit cross-legged. You might want to kneel for a moment. You might just want to stretch your legs ahead of you. But just let yourself just sit up tall, just letting the hands rest on the knees or in your lap in some way. And just giving yourself just a few moments just to focus on the breath, to check in again with how you are on a physical realm, on an energetic realm, how you are maybe within your mind or your emotional state at this time. Sometimes it can be useful to remind ourselves again of why we're here, why we've made this effort. So for our next position, what we're going to do is actually sit or I'm going to turn long ways along my mat. You probably don't need to do that, but just useful for you to see. And we're going to take our legs wide out to the sides. Now, I find it really useful to have something to sit upon. A bolster for me is a bit too high, but I find it useful just to sit on a block instead. So you might find just perching on something can just help to take a little bit of pressure off that pelvic and lower back region. Now, we want to make sure that our legs are able to come out to the sides. But if you start to feel a lot of tension through the hamstrings or into the lower back, you can bend the knees a little bit, or you can put some things underneath the knees if you find it useful. So from this position, we're going to sit up tall. So thinking about from our seated bone all the way up to the crown of our head. And then we're going to lean forwards. And as you lean forwards, just observing and noticing how that feels as you start to shift the weight forwards. Now, you might want to put something in front of you. So if you're struggling to maybe get to the floor, putting your bolster in front of you can be quite a useful thing to do. Just sort of bringing the floor up to you so you've got something to rest upon. Some people like to bring it closer, and depending on flexibility, you might even sort of start to lean into it or onto it. For some people, they might even support their head with their arms. So again, this is one of those positions that is completely unique to each person that comes to this. So some of us will find our backs kind of hinge, so we sort of just come forward and hinge from the waist. Some of us may prefer to round through the back, and actually you might find that rounding feels a little bit more easier on the back. Some people might find that their chin wants to sort of nestle all the way in towards the chest. Some people might need a little support for the head. So you might even consider building up a few blocks and bricks in front of you to maybe bring your head onto. For some people, their legs might be quite kind of almost a bit limp. So imagine that you're sort of not allowing the legs to get too involved in this position. So relaxing the toes, relaxing the ankles. If possible, relaxing the area around the back of the knees. For most of us, you're probably feeling something in your hamstrings. And just noticing what you're feeling in the hamstrings, if that is feeling okay, or if it's feeling kind of a bit excessive. And if it feels excessive, make some adjustments. So bring yourself up slightly, bend the knees a touch, take some of that effort off. Be more interested in what the breath is doing than what the shape of your body is, or the sensations that you might be feeling in your body. It isn't about how far we can go. It's very much about what we're learning on that journey as we move and start to become more conscious, more aware. So again, just a couple more breaths. If you feel ready to come out, please do. And then what I'd like you to do is just gently begin to draw yourself away from that support. And I would suggest using your arms and your hands to push yourself back into a more upright position. You might just find naturally the body kind of wants to release a little bit. So you might just find a natural sort of twist wants to happen through the body. You might find you just need to sort of move the shoulders or bring a bit of mobility into the mid or the upper parts of the back. Where the legs are wide, I'm going to suggest now bring them together. And then as we bring them together, I just wanted to make sure that we all do the same side. So you're bringing your legs in And then we're going to bring our right leg and bend our right knee, bring it in towards ourselves. We're going to step our right foot over our left leg. And then we're going to do something a little bit odd with our right foot. We're going to shuffle it as far over towards that left side and bringing it as close towards that left hip as you can. Now, for some people, they might need to bring the floor up to them. So you could put a bolster or a block underneath and balance that ankle on a support instead. So effectively, what we're doing is we're bending that right knee, and you'll probably start to feel it around that right hip, right sort of lower waist area. Some of you will find, just so for those that are really doing their yoga tonight, I can't do this, but you can see what's happening. You can bring your left leg in, but yeah, my body's not doing that. If you end up leaning like that, come out and do what we're doing now. So then what we're going to do is stretch your arms forwards. You're going to cross your left elbow on top of your right. This is where it gets a bit complicated. And then either bring your hands onto your shoulders, or if you're able to, bring your hands back to back, or bring your palms together. Lift the elbows up, drop the chin slightly down. For the first few moments, we're just going to think about breathing into the upper back region. So think about expanding and contracting into that upper back area, the space between the shoulder blades. Then what I'd like you to do, if it feels okay, is to start to lean forwards. So as though you're bringing your elbows in the direction of your right leg. So you end up curling inwards. So the back is a little bit rounded, dropping the chin in towards the chest. Breathing into that upper back area again. Let the head completely sort of nestle into the chest or into the arms. Just a couple more breaths. And then we're going to lift ourselves back out. So firstly, releasing the arms. If you feel the need, move the shoulders around, move the head around. Always find a yawn or a sigh helps as well. And then we're going to release our legs. So release the legs out. Maybe just have a little move of the legs. You might want to bend the knees. You might want to take the feet out. Just kind of bringing a bit of mobility back into those legs. And then we're going to start off again with our legs stretched ahead of ourselves. We're going to bring our left leg up towards ourselves. And then we're going to step that left foot over our right. And then you're going to wiggle that left foot around towards that right-hand side as close as you can do. So for some people, what will happen is you'll almost end up getting that knee close to the other knee. Others might need a support underneath that foot. So feel free to pop something under there if you feel the floor feels a long way away, or if it will feel better to feel supported. As well, if you wanted to, you could take that right leg over. You can kind of see what's going on. Works better on that side for me. But I'm going to stretch my leg back out again. So sitting up nice and tall, going to stretch our arms ahead of ourselves. This time our right elbow is going to cross on top of our left. And again, options are hands on shoulders, hands back to back, palms together. Drop the chin down. Think about lifting the elbows up. Breathing into that space in the upper back again. So if you think about the space right between the shoulder blades, that connective tissue leading up to the neck and the back of the skull. So very similar to what we did before. If it feels okay, start to think about leaning forwards and curling inwards, letting the head completely go, allowing gravity to take that head and just kind of let it sort of nestle into the arms or into the chest. Just a couple more rounds of breath. And then when you feel ready, just gently bringing yourself out, just sitting yourself up. Again, if you kind of feel some natural movement happening through the upper back, through the shoulders, you might find where we've been curling in, you might just want to take the hands back behind you and just stretch through that chest and compress that upper back, releasing the legs out. And again, if you want to do any movement with the legs, please do. We're going to come do one more position on our backs and then go into relaxation. So I'm going to suggest if you've got anything to put on, socks, jumpers, might be a really good time to put them on now if you wish. And then we're going to come and lie on our back in semi-supine position. So semi-supine is essentially with our knees bent and our feet up on the floor. We're going to come into a twisted position here. So with our knees bent, feet on the floor, what I'd like you to do is walk your feet and thighs together so they're as close as feels comfortable for you. And then again, we're going to do left and right. So you're going to cross your right thigh over your left thigh. Now, what some people find useful to do here is put their bolster on the left-hand side. So if you know your legs don't reach the floor, you can put something to represent the floor and take the legs onto. We're now going to let the knees drop over towards that left-hand side. So essentially what we're going to start to do is roll onto our left hip and the left side of our body. So the knees and the weight of the legs is going on over towards that left-hand side. And then stretch your arms out at chest height, creating a T shape with your arms, and then roll your head in the opposite direction to the way that your legs are going. So roll your head looking over towards your right-hand side. So if you're finding that crossing of the thighs feels too intense around your left hip area, you can always uncross your legs, come back to the center, and then take them back over together, but being uncrossed rather than crossed. If also you find turning your head in the opposite way to the legs doesn't quite feel right, the head can come back to the center point, or you could roll it in the same direction as your legs are going. But essentially what we're doing is we're sort of sending the spine in different directions. So the knees are leading the lower spine over towards the left-hand side, and the turning of the head is moving the spine more towards the right-hand side. So again, it helps to work with this connective tissue running up and down the central spinal column and around the back. Again, checking in with our breath and just noticing how the breath feels in this twist. And all the time, we're just trying to encourage the breath to get that little bit softer, be a little bit more calmer. The least path of resistance for our breath. And when you feel ready, if you turn the head, just gently roll it back to center. If you cross the legs, uncross them. Slide your right foot back onto the floor, back to the center, and then bring the knees gently back up to where we first started, back in that semi-supine position. If you need to, you might want to hug your knees in towards you. You might want to do a full body stretch. Just helping the body to just sort of reset itself. And then when you feel ready, coming back to our semi-supine position, thinking about crossing your left thigh over your right thigh. And then we're going to let both of the knees just drift off towards the right-hand side. Again, if you found it useful, maybe popping a bolster underneath the thighs to catch them on that right-hand side. Again, creating that T shape with the upper body, so stretching the arms along the floor, roughly at chest height. And then turning your head to look in the left direction. Again, if you're finding the head being turned to the left feels too intense, you can always draw it back to center or turn it towards the right side. Just while you're resting here, I'm just going to walk to the corner of the room and just switch the main lights off. So those that are watching the recording, you'll just be able to see an outline of me. Step over. So whenever feels appropriate for you, just begin to slowly bring yourself back to center. Again, going through that process of, if you want to hug into a little ball, if you want to stretch the body along the mat, maybe it might be useful to push the feet into the floor and just gently lift the hips up towards the sky. Just resetting the body as we begin to prepare ourselves for our relaxation. So I would suggest making sure that you have support around you. So you could lie on your back, you could lie on your side. If maybe you're struggling with a cold or respiratory conditions today, you might choose to sit up. If you're at home, you might want to lie on a bed or sit in a chair. You might want to place a blanket over you if you find that's going to be useful to help keep you warm or make you feel a little bit more comfortable. The option of using an eye pillow is there for you as well if you find any glaring light is distracting or doesn't feel comfortable. You might want to place your arms by your body or on your body whatever feels comfortable for you. Knowing that this next 15 minutes is an invitation for your body to be still. An invitation for your mind to be led on a journey. And a chance for your nervous system to just settle that little bit more. I'd like you to turn your awareness to the sensation of support. The support that's being given to you by anything that's around you or beneath you. It might be the floor, it might be the mat, cushions, blankets, bolsters. The notion of this practice being a support for you. And just noticing how it feels to be supported at this time by those things. Then I'd invite you to turn your attention to the sensation of sound. Just be aware of all of the different audible things that you can sense around you. There might be sounds that are far away. There might be sounds that are close by. There might be sounds that are coming from within you. There might be sounds just happening in your immediate vicinity. Loud sound, quiet sound, layers of sound. And just allowing yourself to just be aware of that tapestry of all of the different sounds that you can hear, whatever you can hear. And then turning your attentions to your breath. And just observing your breath as it naturally comes and goes. Going back to how we started this practice, with no expectations of our breath other than for it to happen. Every breath being a completely unique experience, a unique moment in time. Noticing how, as the breath comes and goes, whether you're breathing through the nose or through the mouth, or a combination of the two. Noting where you might be able to feel the breath in your body. You might feel the breath in the nostrils, maybe at the back of the throat. Maybe you feel the breath in the chest, maybe in the ribs, maybe in the abdomen. Maybe you feel the breath through the sides of the body or in the back of the body. Then leaving your awareness of the breath and turn your attention to your mind. And in a very similar way to what we've just done with the breath, just noticing how the thoughts come and go. How some thoughts might be fast, some might be slower. How some thoughts, as quick as they appear, they disappear. How some thoughts linger. How some thoughts feel very present. Some feel a long way away. And you might want to imagine the mind a little bit like the sky. And each thought is like a cloud upon the sky. Some days that sky might be really cloudy. Sometimes it might be clear. Sometimes the clouds might be thick or thin. But just allowing the thoughts in your mind to represent the clouds passing across the sky. And similar to how clouds are, some will stay, some will go. Some will be fast and some will be slow. Some will be heavy, some will be light. Whatever's going on in the mind, there's always the sky behind it. So allow that idea, the clouds, the thoughts, the sky to fall away if it hasn't done already. And just give yourself a moment just to acknowledge and reflect upon how you are at this time, how you feel. And as you begin to feel ready, just very, very gradually start to allow a little bit of movement back into your body in whatever way feels right to you. You might find just gently stretching, yawning, or sighing. Again, you might want to hug yourself into a little ball. You might want to stretch along the mat. If you've been lying on your side, you might just want to roll into another position. If you've been lying on your back, you might find rolling onto your side could be a really useful thing to do to just help to support yourself. And then when you feel ready, I'd invite you to just gently begin to bring yourself over into a position where you can push yourself up into a seat when you feel ready. And again, your seat can be however feels comfortable for you. You might choose to sit cross-legged, you might wish to kneel, you might want to sit upon something, a chair, a cushion. You might want to lean against a wall or something that's going to be supportive. And just allowing yourself, however you've chosen to sit tall. So you've got this slight sense of extension through the spine, but without forcing the spine or the back to feel too rigid or too upright. Again, allowing the eyes to close or focusing your gaze upon something ahead of you that isn't moving. And just for the next few moments, again, just connecting with the breath, that consistency in our life, the come in and the go in of the in breath and the out breath. The ever-changing pattern of the breath. With each inward and outward journey. If it feels okay for you, join the hands together into Amanjali Mudra. Just lightly pushing the left and the right hands together. And slightly bow your head towards your hands. Taking this time to acknowledge maybe what you're taking from this practice this evening. What those things were that you needed to hear or been reminded of. What those little insights of intuition or inner knowledge may have been. Taking this opportunity to acknowledge the care and the attention you've shown to yourself, the care and the attention that we've shown to each other, and how this care and attention can continue to be with you as you step off of your mat and step back into your life. Om Shanti. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here this evening. Really lovely to share that practice with you. Take your time, there's no rush. If you are watching this in the evening, just maybe try and avoid too much distraction. Maybe go straight to bed or do whatever you need to do this evening as your sort of evening routine. But try and avoid too much stimulation.